the front end for the product is a web interface. And the product is built on a number of different dashboard scenarios, right? So there are any number of pre-configured dashboards. What we're looking at here is the default baseline dashboard. There's a number of them available, and I'll go into a couple of them just to give you a point of reference. But with the baseline dashboard, I've got a quick view of what's out there in my environment. I can see that there's 148 hosts. I've got a couple of mainframes. I've got some clusters and some host containers. These are LDOMs, LPARs, things of that nature. I've got some network devices out there. I've got 1,643 software instances. Now, software instances are those data center class applications that I was referring to, rather than just the packages that are installed on a machine. A package to us is something like Media Player or Internet Explorer or things of that nature that they're really part of the operating system, but they're not that data center class application that's delivering a service or capable of delivering a service. So we separate those out, and we look at these software instances as the applications like an Oracle, like an SQL server, things of that nature. Going a little further down, I can see that I've got, a breakdown of my software publishers, and of course BMC is very heavy in my environment. But I can also get a look at my host distribution, so the operating systems that are running in my environment, and I can drill into any of these. So if I wanted to go in and I wanted to see what, these couple of devices over here, these Macs look like, right? Well, that's my wife and my Mac machines that we have here. And we've collected a great amount of detail through standard inventory capabilities on those machines. But I can drill in, I can see where those pieces are. Now, all of these charts can be changed. So if I prefer a different type of chart, I can change them. All of them, most of them also support this over time view. And maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. But right here at this point, I've got a number of devices, and then here the line's just a little bit higher, and I've got 90 devices, right, that fall into the Unix category. So that's an over-the-time kind of a gap, and you'll be able to see more of a variance in your own environment based on the amount of change and how many new machines come in. But again, I can change these views to be whatever it is that I'm most comfortable looking at based on what I need to know at this point. So that's really the baseline dashboard, right? If I want to dive into a host machine, I've got a list of all my hosts that come up. If I'm interested in, say, maybe a specific location, I could go in and I could say find everything with a London name or a London as part of the name of the machine. I can drill in. I can drill down and I can see, well, here's a VM machine. I can go in and I can see the details about that machine. Now, you notice there's some extra data here. There's location and ownership information. There's no way to really discover that. But what we have is the ability to, based on the fact that we have found a machine in the London environment, we can assign an address to it or a location to it based on a lookup table or something of that nature. Maybe it's an external database that has that kind of information. We can also, based on characteristics of the applications and so on, we can assign, through the same kind of lookups, we can assign who's the business owner of that application, who's the IT owner, who do I call if there's a problem, right? So all of that information can be pulled in here and then also synchronized into the CMDB if that was what you like. We can see, what kind of an operating system it is, what release it's at, and so on. We can see here that we've actually exceeded the end of life on this Red Hat 4 instance. We've exceeded the end of support, and right now we're paying extra, obviously, for extended support on an operating system that could very probably be upgraded, right? I've got machine details, right? So I can see the exact kind of machine it is, how it's configured, the number of processors, the number of cores per processor, and so on. But oh, look here. I've got an error of some sort on this Ethernet configuration. So I can actually show the details, and I can see that I've got a mismatch on the speed configuration between the switch that it's plugged into and the port that's configured on that switch is configured at 100 megabits. Same thing with this Ethernet. So what's happening is I'm going into negotiation, and I'm having issues probably with performance on whatever machines that are running on this particular VM. I can see what the virtual guests are for this machine. I can grab the names. Oh, well, I saw those earlier in my list. So if we go back, we can drill in and we can take a look at one of those machines, right? We can see that I've got 7 software instances running on this thing. We could, if we're interested, we can drill in, we can see what they are. Well, this is part of my risk assessment engine, right? Oh, there's a sync process that's running between Frankfurt, and there's another one that runs to London, and another one that runs to New York, and so on. This thing is synchronizing data back and forth, but it's doing it over channels that are negotiating every time we need to set up a communications path between these devices. So what's the big picture here? So if I want to look, I can see where does this particular machine, or how does this particular machine fit into that risk engine? Well, I can see it's part of a cluster. I can, because that was that VM host that we saw earlier. I can see that there's a number of different applications that are running and dependent on that particular application. I can see the switches and so on, but that's just the risk analysis engine. The example we're looking at here is an online banking application. So if I want to see the big picture, I can go even further in, and I can see that the risk engine is actually part of a larger online banking application that has other processes connected to it. So I've got my risk engine here, and I can see that there's a mail hub that's associated with that particular risk engine and so on. So it gives us an idea of what's out there and how we can leverage this information to move forward, to diagnose problems. If I got an error somewhere in the environment, I can very quickly and easily figure out what applications or what servers I need to start looking at to solve that problem. So I talked a little bit about these various dashboards. So there might be a particular discipline or frame of reference that you want to view the data, right? So perhaps it's you're going through and you're looking at your operating system products to find out what old operating systems are running in my environment. What are the various different operating systems that I'm running? Which ones are giving me the exposure that I don't want, like machines that are operating systems that have exceeded end of extended support. If we look over here, we've got a number of them that have exceeded extended support. And again, I see the server that they're built on, what they are, what versions they are, and so on. And again, we can drill into any of these and we can get detailed information about where those applications live in our environment, right? And how they function. So that's a quick example of say an operating system lifecycle analysis. I can see which machine or which operating systems are within 6 months of end of life, right? So here's a listing of those. Again, I can start to do better planning. I can start to think about upgrades. I can start to think about where the problems might occur, and I can look at the upstream, downstream impacts of making those decisions. The same thing is true if we looked at another dashboard, say the software lifecycle analysis. I get a list of all of the software products by category in my environment. So whether it's change of configuration management software, whether it's security software, whatever that happens to be, I can, I have the breakdowns by categories, I have the breakdowns by publishers, and so on. But I've also got the end-of-life data that tells me that I've got a number of applications out here that have exceeded the end of extended support. What are those applications? Well, I've got some old Oracles out here, some old versions of VMware, whatever it is. I've got so on and so forth. So again, it gives me an idea of the kinds of changes that might be coming up, or the things that I might want to be planning as we move forward in the environment. So again, this could be very useful to an asset manager or something of that nature to be able to pull that kind of information. We could look at things like software product summary. And you notice that all of these different dashboards also have specific reports on each of the dashboards that might, that pertain specifically to those different things. But here's an example of all of the various flavors of databases that I might be running out in the environment. So I've got Windows 2000 or SQL 2000, 2005, a couple of them that are unknown. Don't know how we managed to miss those. But for some reason the version information didn't come back here. But I can see the mix of the different oracles and so on that are running out in the environment. I can look at software distribution by category. Again, I can see where software is installed. I can see what role it plays in delivering a business service, and I can make intelligent decisions about upgrading that software, about license consumption, and so on. So I can see exactly how many versions of a particular application I have running. And again, it helps me prepare for that audit if that happens to come up. Not that Oracle ever audits anybody, but again, it's just a good place to start that allows us to go in and start running some specific discipline type reports. So again, another example is maybe the server consolidation. I'm looking to become a green IT shop. I want to see what machines are out there in my environment that might be running a little slow, or maybe these machines are just not adequate in today's environment. Well, here's an indication of some machines that may require some attention. I've got some 5 machines out here in my environment where the processor speed is less than a gigahertz. That tells me an awful lot about the age of these machines, right? So I can go out and I can look and see what kind of machines these are. And you see that I've got, these 5 machines. I'm really probably not interested in this test machine, but we can get some very detailed information about these machines. So again, I've got this idea of becoming a green IT shop. I need to go out and I need to start looking at things. So what do I have? I've got a Sun Enterprise 10K. It's got 16 processors, but those processors are running at 400 megahertz, right? So that's probably not a whole lot of compute power in today's standards. We can see that this particular server requires 42 rack units. That's an entire rack, right? It's drawing an awful lot of power, and it's generating a lot of BTUs. 38,700 BTUs. Did a little lookup recently, and if you live in New York, Maine, New Hampshire, Minnesota, you're in the category 1. They say it takes on average 5,000, 1 BTU or 5 BTUs per square foot. So if we've got 4 of these machines, we're able to heat a 3,000 square foot house in the coldest part of the country just by running these machines in our data center. Now think about also how much cooling power it takes to keep these machines running. So potentially these machines have now become a candidate for replacement. Maybe it's an application that I might be able to upgrade the hardware underneath and gain more efficiencies. So the first thing we would want to do is we would want to figure out where they live in the environment. What actions or what service do they perform, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to go out and we want to look at the application software dependencies that we have found and discovered in the environment. We want to see what application is actually hosted by that. And oh my, this is a huge map.